I'd like to really encourage you to stop by and watch the sit-down interview I had with Christian artist, musician, songwriter Danny Gokey. It was a great time with him. I asked Danny to sit down with me and let me interview him because he had posted a number of things in light of the Dobbs decision that ended Roe v. Wade that I thought were quite courageous. He took a really open stance about his willingness to defend the unborn. And I think this is significant because the Dobbs decision actually instilled a lot of fear in people, particularly Christian leaders across this nation. I personally see that pastors, for example, are even more intimidated now after the end of Roe than they were before. I think it's because they recognize that they can now become the target of animosity, hatred, attack. Pregnancy centers have been attacked. Board members have been attacked who are representing those pregnancy centers. In other words, there's a high cost to your convictions now in a way that there wasn't prior to the end of Roe. Danny Gokey, you may know, was a finalist in American Idol some years ago. It really launched his career. His life and his life story are very intriguing. I really encourage you to watch the interview. He was widowed at a very young age. And then right after that, he was on American Idol and began to express his Christian faith and has continued on there to be a very successful music and songwriter. But what was encouraging is his willingness to risk a lot to stand for truth. And in this time where we really need courage to go along with conviction, I'm struck by Danny Gokey. There's a lot, he could lose a lot by his stand. He could be canceled by our culture very quickly. And yet he took a stand. And I just wanted to ask him about that. So learn more by watching that interview, John Enser and Danny Gokey. And I think that you will learn a lot and be inspired to follow in his footsteps. This was actually the third musician that I've interviewed. The first one was with John Piper and the hip-hop artist Lecrae some years ago. You might want to check that out as well. I asked Lecrae to sit down with me because he had written a song particularly exposing his own involvement with abortion, talking about the pressure that he put on a young woman early in his life and his long-term regret as he became more and more aware of the reality of abortion, as his own faith grew and matured, and as he wanted to start a new life, a new marriage with a clean slate, he wanted to confess some of his own past. I thought that took a lot of courage, and he wrote a song called Good, Bad, Ugly. Powerful song. So if you want to check out his statement on abortion and men's involvement in abortion through his music, check that out. And finally, I sat down with Matthew West. He has this incredible story as a songwriter in which I think it was about 10 years ago, he almost lost his own voice. I mean, this is the way he was going to make his living, and this was his passions, writing music, singing. And he got sick and he almost lost his own voice. But God restored it. And during that period, he says that he got affirmation that God was going to use his voice to bring out the voices of others. And so he started inviting his listeners to write letters to him. And all of his songs were really written as they were inspired by the personal testimonies of people who would write to him. And one of the songs that he wrote was called Untold. And it really speaks to the crisis that a woman goes through when she's pregnant and not yet ready. And he wrote a song called Untold, Don't Give Up on Me Now. I'm a story untold. There are more pages, more chapters to your life and mine together. It's a beautiful song, a pro-life song. And just listening to Matthew West talk about this, Lecrae, Danny Gokey, these are artists who are out there speaking courageously in defense of the unborn. And finally, I just want to mention that there's some historical precedent for this. Back in the 18th century, an artist by the name of Josiah Westwood designed a carving that was made into a pin, a hat pin, a lapel pin. It was made into bracelets. Here's a picture of it here. But this became the symbol of the abolitionist movement in the 18th and even into the 19th century. It really is a sign of an African American in chains. It says, "Am I not your brother and a man?" And artists and poets and novelists and preachers, as well as politicians by the 19th century, were wearing this pin as a symbol of their conviction that the slave trade was evil, and of course slavery itself was evil. And all of those voices came together at a critical time in the 19th century to bring about the abolition of slavery. So artists have a role to play in our culture, for good or for evil, and I really want to celebrate those artists who stand for life and take the conviction of Scripture and voice it courageously into the culture in all the variety of ways that they have through music and through writing and other forms of art. And I think finally we should also, we may not be a public figure, but we still have places that it takes courage to speak. And I want to challenge myself and challenge us all that as our culture becomes more and more anti-Christian, let us find our courage and speak with grace. Thanks.